Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Each and every show, we talk to the experts to get their advice on the ever-changing digital social marketing landscape. This show is no different. Episode number 83. Will, it's the Business of Social Office edition as we continue to move into the new headquarters here. The podcast studio, I would say, about 85% complete to this point. I expect it in the next 10 business days to be in good shape to fire back up the engines.
Yeah, I think this will be our last remote episode, if you will.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice a different background. Shout out to my guy, Robert, who's setting up a nice camera setup here in the office. So it still looks, relatively professional. All right, Will. So before we get into the amazing guests that you booked for today's show, let's get into 83. What do we got on the docket for 83?
All right, I'll hit you with a few names. Ted Hendricks, Andre Reed, Mark Clayton, Willie Galt, Wes Welker. And I think Hendricks, I've never heard of him before, but he has a fantastic nickname, the Mad Stork.
I'm going to go with my guy, Wes Welker, because I always like to ask this question. If Welker didn't have Brady, is he Wes Welker? And I guess he played well in Miami prior to the Patriots, but I'm a big fan of if you're a decent receiver, if you have an amazing Hall of Fame quarterback, it catapults you to stardom. Anyways.
I fully agree with that take. Yeah, I think you're right.
So that's why I think our boy Amari Cooper is happy that Baker Mayfield's out of town. Anyway, sorry. That was a dig at the Cleveland fans. I apologize. All right, so let's get into it. Will, we've talked to directors of marketing, CMO, social media managers, CEOs, obviously. And we got another CEO on the podcast. I'd like to go straight to the top with Cotopaxi. He is the founder and CEO, Davis Smith. Will, I know you had a chance to speak with him as well. I talked to him a little bit before the program. Just an amazing dude. I think he started over 3 companies. Obviously, if you don't know what Cotopaxi is, they create outdoor products, apparel, and experiences to help alleviate poverty, more people to do good, and inspire adventure. If you know what Patagonia is, it's kind of in that same industry, Will, but they're doing some really great work, and I'm super excited to dig in with Davis.
And I think just looking at Davis's resume in terms of like just where he went to school and his education level just shows you like this dude is sharp and knows his stuff. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say and what he's learned
since he's the CEO founder. I think Cotopaxi is at about 250 plus employees now. I want to get less into the nuances of like Instagram algorithms, of course. I don't think that's where I want to go with him. I want to get into leadership and people management. And if you're a leader out there listening to this podcast, what can you learn from Davis? Maybe I can share some stories as well as far as trial and error, as me being a leader as well, of how you could support your team, have a motivated workforce, all those different things. And then also as a CEO, like how do you speak to a CEO? How do you make sure you get time on their calendar? How do you, if you're a candidate, how do you break through the mold and rise to the top as someone that the CEO wants to hire? I really want to get his expertise because he's built an incredible company. And I think everybody on this show will be able to get some value based on the answers to those questions. All right, here he is, the founder and CEO of Cotopaxi, Davis Smith, on episode 83 of the Business of Social. All right, as promised, I am joined by Davis Smith. He is the founder and CEO of Cotopaxi. Davis, thanks so much for the time, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, David, this is exciting. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I like to start off sometimes with a random question. If you were a late night television host, who's your first guest that you would book and why?
Okay.
Sorry, got to hit you with a hard one up front.
You know what? There's a few people I think of. Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia.
Yeah.
Really a legend in the outdoor industry, which I'm in. And frankly, one of the most amazing thought leaders in terms of thinking differently about the purpose of business. Yeah. And I just really admire him and what he's built over the last really almost 50 years at Patagonia. So he would definitely be one. Another one that's actually interesting. I'm not like really big into celebrities. Like I don't watch TV. Or I don't really know any celebrities. Like I don't know names that well.
Yeah.
But one that I think is interesting is Angelina Jolie. Mm-hmm. She has been so passionate about people and looking out for the disadvantaged, and has used a lot of her voice and efforts in helping others, especially refugees, which I'm very passionate about. So that's certainly one that I would find very interesting.
There you go. Hey, those are good answers, man. Took you 5 seconds to kind of get your bearings there, but you were good.
Yeah.
So you found Cotopaxi back in 2014, outdoor gear company. What motivated you to start the company? Because I know you had some successes early on as well as some other startups.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it was a long time coming. It was not that I had the idea for a long time, because I didn't, but the concept was something that my whole life I had wanted to figure out. And I moved to the Dominican Republic as a 4-year-old. My family left the United States and for my dad's job, and I ended up spending, I spent nearly 2 decades of my life living in the developing world. And so all my childhood and into my teenage years, and then a lot of my adult life. And so from the time I can remember, I knew this is what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to find a way to lift other people. And for me, it was just a matter of figuring out, how do I do that? What talents do I have? What skills that I have that I could use to go help other people? And do I do that by working in a nonprofit or in the nonprofit world? Do I do that? When I was in college for like a hot minute, I thought maybe I should be a lawyer and figure out how to fight for human rights as a lawyer. And then I quickly realized that
once you realize it's 90% paperwork and 10% other stuff, you're like,
exactly. It's like, that was a quick, actually, it's funny. I was living in Peru doing an internship in college, and I met an American expat, and I was telling him how I was thinking about going to law school. Dude, he shut me down so fast. He was like, dude, there's no lawyer I've ever met in my life that loves their job. He's like, you've got to do something else. And it was like, oh, okay. I spent a decade as an entrepreneur building a couple of other businesses. Neither of those 2 businesses had social impact built into the business in any way, which was honestly a frustration for me. It was something I was really disappointed in myself about, that I hadn't figured out how to use my life in a way to help others. And, but those experiences and these deep-seated feelings I had, and of passion and just relentlessly looking for a way to help others, it all kind of came together and really kind of birthed this idea for Cotopaxi.
Do you think, I always wondered this question, even about myself. I think early on, I don't know if it's a survival mechanism or not, but you're worried about, putting food on the table. You're worried about being successful yourself, and you're a little bit more looking inward. I find when people like you have success, and I've kind of found this up myself as I've kind of got years in my business as well, is like, what's it all for? Yes, now I have a paycheck, I have a nice home, I got my foundation where I feel good and not freaking out in that regard. But what's next? It feels like there's a click that happens for a lot of us, in our adult age.
No, I definitely think you're right. I mean, I remember when I was in college and I was starting to move down this path of entrepreneurship, I was starting to brainstorm ideas, and I had 2 different ideas that were built around this idea of giving back. One of them was a really random business where I thought, I lived in Peru for this internship, and I'd seen on the streets of Peru, they would sell these roses, beautiful, 24 roses for $2 or $3. And that's when I realized that I'd been ripped off in the United States whenever I was buying flowers. Why do roses cost so much?
100 flowers gets me for about $55 every time. Yeah,
exactly. So, I had this idea of what if I imported roses, and we sold roses, and we could use the money to support local farmers in Peru or in Ecuador, in these places where they grew. And so I dabbled in this idea, and there's a longer story here. I actually launched a little business that lasted a few days during Valentine's Day. Okay. And it had some success, but also some painful lessons. But the bottom line was that I was kind of dabbling in this idea of trying to find a business that could do good. And at the end of the day, I didn't even know how to run a business. I didn't know how to hire people or build a team. I didn't know how to do anything. And adding the complexity of the do good mission, it was I was just overwhelmed. I don't know how to do all of this. And so in some ways I really had to do what you mentioned, which was I just had to learn how to build a business. Mm-hmm. And I started with a really simple business that worked. And it wasn't too complex, but I learned a lot of great lessons of leadership and scaling. And I was able to leverage that to go build the second thing. And then at some point, in my 30s, I was like, okay, I'm not wealthy. I don't have so much money that I can never, I don't have to work again, but I feel like I have sufficient that it's I'm going to be okay.
Right.
Like, what if I went and really figured this out? So
I love it. How influential is Patagonia overall? It seems like you obviously hold them to high regard, but obviously they are kind of known for just a brand that people fall in love with, ambassadorship, but also, one of the top brands when it talks giving back, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting. I'm maybe a little ashamed to admit this. I actually didn't know much about Patagonia when I had the idea for Cotopaxi, and partially because I wasn't living in the United States.
Oh yeah,
I was living in Brazil at the time. I spent a lot of my life in Latin America.
Probably a good thing because you might have got, I'm not going to do it. Patagonia already, dominates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, exactly. In fact, it wasn't until I was telling, and I don't remember who told me, but I was telling someone early in the days of Cotopaxi, before I'd done anything, I was like, I have this single idea. I'm going to build this outdoor brand that's focused on people and fighting poverty. And someone's like, I love the idea. And you would be really inspired by Patagonia and what they're doing. And I was like, oh yeah, I know the brand Patagonia, but I really don't know anything about them. And they said, you should read this book called Let My People Go Surfing. And I read the book and it was just like, yes, this is exactly it.
My guy. Yeah.
Yes, this is my guy. And, but the real focus of the Cotopaxi brand was really around, I love the environment. I love the earth. As an outdoors person, I really want to protect it. But my deepest emotions are around people. And my deepest passion is around helping people. And so that's what I wanted to kind of build the brand around.
I'm excited to dig in with you. I think this is such a hot topic in this new virtual world and this hybrid workplace. I mean, obviously you care about people, so it starts with Cotopaxi and the people that work for you, and then you guys are able to go outward with amazing culture. You mentioned this. I read your article on LinkedIn, the 5 lessons learned in survival situations that prepared me to lead through crisis. I can relate after the last couple of years myself. I love what you said because I related with this a lot. One of your points was, when in trouble, don't wait, communicate. And I feel like so many leaders get that wrong. What have you learned about that process?
Yeah, no. Well, I'm so glad you read that little piece.
Yeah, great.
I love survival trips and adventures, and I've done 2 this year already, where I'll go survive on an island for a week and spearfish and eat coconuts to survive. Bring no food.
Wow, nice.
I love that stuff, but for me, a lot of it is about learning about myself and learning how to lead. And, I share in that article a story of being on a trip, one of these survival trips, with a friend of mine who, we were looking for a reef to go spearfish in. And there was a very strong current because of the tide, the shifting tide. It can change currents pretty quickly. And, a lot of times you wear weight belts when you're free diving to get down deep. And, we were just kind of caught in this current, and he found himself just completely exhausted and started yelling for help. And, he dropped his weight belt, and, me and my other buddy, we swam to him, we grabbed him, and we swam to shore. And I came back and got the weight belt later. And, I was so grateful that he wasn't too embarrassed to yell for help. And, I think of this in leadership, where if we are in a moment where it's like, I think I might be in trouble, you cannot wait. There is no waiting, because if you end up sinking, it's too late. And, who cares about dropping the weight belt, dropping whatever it is. That's like, you drop the ball on something. It's like, no big deal. Like, we'll all help go pick that back up. And, so, when the pandemic began, I took this lesson to heart. And, we closed our office and our retail stores on March 13th on a Friday.
Yep.
I spent the entire weekend with my executive team putting together a plan. And Monday, March 16th, we had an all hands meeting, and I communicated. And I told everyone I was nervous. I didn't know exactly what this was going to look like, but I told them we had a plan. And I made them some promises that I would be communicative, that I would be transparent, and that I wouldn't be afraid to make hard decisions. And we kind of outlined every aggressive step that we were making that would allow us to survive no matter what came to us. And fortunately, it wasn't as dramatic as we planned for the very, very worst, understanding it probably wouldn't be that bad. And it gave our team assurance that, you know what, things are scary. There is uncertainty. It's okay to feel a little bit nervous, but we have a plan. And as long as we stick to this plan, we're going to survive. We'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's such a big thing to say to be vulnerable as a leader. Like, I don't have all the answers. I remember doing the same thing with my team, all us business owners, right? I mean, you just didn't know. And it felt right to me to let the team know, like, I'm not sure how this is going to unfold. But like you said, here's the plan and here's how we're going to attack it. And I was amazed. I'm sure you got the same feedback from your team, how many people like thank me up and down for that communication. And I just thought of it as like, this is probably the right thing to do. I didn't think of it for me to get my roses per se after the communication, but so much positive feedback. Like those memos, those emails, those talks eased our anxiety and knew that you were on top of it. And it just something I don't think a lot of leaders do or think, they think they don't want to be vulnerable. They have to know all the answers at all times.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It brings to mind when I was I went to business school. I went to the Wharton School in Philadelphia. My very first professor, she would talk a lot about emotional contagion. And this idea that your emotions are contagious, just like a virus would be. And positivity and negativity are contagious. And so yes. As a leader, this is part of your responsibility is to shape messages and to have this positive emotional contagion. And the one thing to be careful of course, is that you cannot be you can't have rose-colored glasses, like yes. in the sense of like, yeah, I'm the world's biggest optimist. I'm always seeing the positive, but the risk that I have is like, I may like gloss over something that's really challenging. And so I need to remember that in my positivity, I need to acknowledge pain points. Yes. I need to acknowledge when things aren't going well. But then I think always tied with that needs to be a plan. Mm-hmm. Always. You're acknowledging that something isn't right. You have to acknowledge a plan along with it. And if you do that, people resonate with it and they feel that positivity. They feel hope that you're going to get through those challenging times.
I heard a quote once, like, I'm happy to hear about your problems, but the second conversation has to be about solutions. That's one. And then I heard something recently too, like CEO actually should stand for Chief Energizing Officer, whether that's energizing through a plan of attack, whether it's through a tough time, whether it's just like pumping the team up when they need that support. Like it's just I think so important to energize the team. How has your team changed with the pandemic, like as far as percentage in office, retail, virtual, people working on different continents? Like how has it changed your guys' day to day?
I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, I was the world's biggest believer in being in the office. David, I had literally never worked at home before the pandemic. Like I discouraged people from working remotely and working at home. If you joined the Cotopaxi team, you had to move to Salt Lake. And I just thought, I really value culture and building great company culture and around core values and traditions and rituals. And I felt like that needed to happen in person. Once the pandemic started, we obviously we didn't have a choice. We were all working remotely.
Right.
And within weeks, I realized I was wrong. Mm-hmm. Like straight up, like I was wrong. Like this was working. And in fact, it was working better in a lot of ways than it had before. People were more efficient and there was less disruption. And it's not to say that everything was better. Everything was not better. There were things that we were missing, the connectivity, all these other things that you only get in person or that are harder to do online or virtually. That said, we started to figure those out and we made the decision early to go all remote. And there was no more like, hey, when are we going to be in the office? Like within the first month of the pandemic, we just said, this is it. Like we can either own this and lead, or we can follow. We can kick against the pricks and act like this isn't going to be permanent. And everyone else will figure out how to work remotely and they'll have a huge advantage over us. And then we'll have to eventually do it. And so I just figured, let's do it. Let's figure it out. Let's be better at this than anyone else. And if we adopt early, then we'll have an advantage. And so we do have our office still. We didn't shut down our office. Like it's still open. Some people go to work every day there. Some people that join our team still move to Salt Lake City. They choose to move to here and they're like, hey, I want to be closer to the outdoors. I want to ski. I want to mountain bike. I want to have all this access. And they move here and they choose to go into the office. But the reality is that most of us, like you can see, I am, working from home. And I still go into the office here and there. And we've built some really cool things around connectivity and some big things like we have a summer camp every summer where an entire company comes from all over the country. Yeah. And we mountain bike and we rock climb and we hike and we do all these things. We have a ski trip in the winter. So like we have these things that we bring people together with. But we find that those meetings are less about work. It's more about just having fun together and connecting personally. And I actually know people better now with these really dedicated moments of getting to know people than I did before, where I felt like I knew everyone running into the hallway, but where you really weren't deeply connecting with people.
It's funny, as we record this weekend, I'm flying out the entire team to San Diego and doing just that, like that retreat. And it's all built on team building. We're not doing any work and things like that. And as a leader, I kind of struggle with that as well. Is like, there's a reason we pay $16 for a cocktail, because humans ultimately want to be around other humans in some way, shape, or form. So you can't just cut that completely out. And I think I noticed with the culture, innocent mistakes, miscommunication, just things, maybe trust isn't built because all you are on is Slack and Zoom calls. But it seems like you figured that part out too. It's the summer camps, it's the annual retreats, it's those regional meetups. Because as I talk to my staff too, 2 years after the pandemic, they all say more in person, more satellite offices. Like they want to be around their people more. So has that been kind of the balance? Like Monday through Friday will be virtual, but we're going to make sure we have these investments in these large events.
Yeah. So we, it's interesting. We don't even use the word hybrid. And it's actually, I guess there's a question, what does hybrid even mean? Does hybrid mean working a few days in the office and a few days at home? Or does it mean some people work at home and some people don't? I don't exactly know, but I think the risk with hybrid is that you don't do anything well. And so when we committed to being like 100% virtual, it was like, this is it. Like, we've got to figure this out because there's no other choice. And so, for us, every quarter we do these innovation tournaments. We've done those from the beginning of the company, and the innovation tournaments we've shifted to virtual, and they actually work better virtually than they did in person. And it's a couple hours where we spend as a team together solving problems, and everyone in the company gets a week ahead of time gets a challenge that we're trying to solve for. And then they all come together. We break into breakout rooms on Zoom, and they have an hour to present their best ideas to each other. And we've done virtual hiking where we have like a Zoom meeting, the same slot every week. And for an hour, you can go out and walk around the block, or you can go on a trail. But it allows everyone to kind of go outside and connect with each other. So I don't know that we've totally figured it out. In fact, we haven't totally figured it out.
Nobody has, right?
No, but it feels like we're making good progress. We've figured some things out, and we know that we're on the right path.
What's the toughest thing about being fully virtual and remote?
I think burnout. I think, and it's not across the entire team, but I think there are individuals that find it very hard to unplug from work.
You don't have the natural bookends where you get in your car and pack up your laptop and go home. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So we've seen that a percentage of our workforce, and it's a small percentage. It's somewhere between 10 and 20%. Okay. We've done a lot of survey work over the last 2 years, and 10 to 20% struggle to disconnect, and because they're at home, they just constantly stay connected. And those are the people, and you don't have warning signs. As a leader, you're not seeing that person the last one.
Go to bed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been one of the biggest challenges. And so as leadership, we're learning how to identify those situations, how to address them ahead of time before there's problems, helping set structure and boundaries, and encouraging the team constantly set boundaries. And if you're struggling with this, there's no embarrassment in talking about it. Talk to your manager in your next one-on-one about setting boundaries and figure that out. And we've instructed all people leaders and managers, this is how you set boundaries. This is how you address this. These are the questions you should be asking your team. So, we're learning through some painful moments.
I think it's so relevant because from CMOs to director of marketings to anybody that listens to this program across the spectrum, I think there's people that are listening right now that deal with that, right? Where it's like always on. And I even did this myself when I worked the first couple of months from home. Is you're like, well, I should be working on this right now in my 3 to 4 p.m. block, but I'll just do it later tonight. And then you kind of like guilt trip yourself all evening because you haven't done that project yet. And now it's 10:30 p.m. and it just feels like you've worked this 16-hour day because you kind of procrastinated. You maybe wiped your kitchen counter off. And you're kind of just not staying focused. So I can totally understand how a large percentage can get into that habit.
Great point.
Yeah. What's the best part about going fully remote?
The best part is like being connected with our families or people we're around, right? I mean, Oh my gosh, this was so funny. So yesterday, I'm in between meetings, and I have like a 5 or 10 minute break, and I go out of my office, and I see my 3-year-old, and he's in this mode right now where he wants to do everything himself, and I noticed his shirt was on backwards, and I start to fix it, and then I notice his pants are put on inside out, and he's got his shoes on the wrong feet.
Wow.
And I take his shoe off, and his socks are on, the heel of his sock is on the top.
This
of his
is a calculated effort, I'm sure.
Yes, it was like, dude, I was like literally like busting up. I was like cracking up. And it's like, I am so glad I have this moment.
Right.
Like I never had these before. I didn't have these moments. I have 2 teenage daughters, and it's like, I didn't have these moments with them because I was gone during the day. And so that's, I think, what's most special for me.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too deep, but like how much has that, on a percentage basis, do you feel like you're closer to your family now because of that?
I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hear from all parents that it's been an absolute game changer. I mean, even just the commute, all that.
It's a game changer. I feel like I know my family for the first time. And it's not that I have always had a good work-life balance. I've never been a workaholic. Like I enjoy coming home and spending time with my family. I enjoy traveling with my kids, but I just didn't know what I was missing. And honestly, I've also found I'm a better partner. Like I'm doing the dishes all the time. I'm helping around the house. I'm picking up toys. I'm changing a diaper. Like I'm doing those things that I just frankly wasn't around to do. And so I feel like even my relationship with my wife is better. I mean, it's just, awesome. It's been, I would never go back.
So I know a lot of folks, especially again, senior managers, directors, they're really concerned about the FaceTime with their CEO. They're concerned about the FaceTime with their decision maker internally. Do I need to come in the office and show some face once a week to kind of build that rapport? Do I need to put a one-on-one every 2 weeks? Like, I guess from your standpoint, I'm sure you can kind of get in the mind of other CEOs and how they think. What is your advice to those folks that just want to make sure that their career development doesn't stall or they make any wrong decisions based on this new environment?
Yeah, this is a really fair concern.
Yeah.
I'll share one thing I'm learning, and I'm really enjoying this, and I actually want to get better at it, and I want to encourage my team to do more of it, which is I've started doing every day. I make an effort to reach out to one person on our team. Sometimes it's a random phone call or a random Skype video call where it's like, I'm sure they're like,
wait. You guys use Skype?
Oh no! Why did I say Skype?
But you're the only person ever used Skype. Wow.
Yeah, we're still 10 years.
I love my famous tweet during the pandemic was Skype had a 20-year head start and still found a way to fumble the bag. But that's
no kidding. No kidding. So my last business, I was in Brazil, and we used Skype for everything.
Okay.
Because so that's probably why it slipped in. But Slack, we use Slack. I'll do this random Slack video call, and it
probably scares the shit out of them. They're thinking they get fired.
It probably does. And sometimes they don't answer very quickly, or it's like they're probably like getting proper, it's like or something. But I've even started doing a lot of you can record up to a 3-minute video on Slack.
Oh, interesting.
And you can send it to people. And so I started doing this a lot, where I'll just record a little video, and that way they're not, having to answer my call or whatever, but they'll get a little note from me that says, "Hey, I just want you to know that in our executive meeting today, your name came up." Ooh, and you are doing.
Davis, I'm stealing all this from you. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So it is so fun. And like the response that I get from people is like, they're so touched that I'm like, taking the time to record a little video. It takes like a minute or two. And but I love it. It's like my favorite part of the day is acknowledging people and saying, "Hey, I just want to notice, I just got our email today and you did a great job. I loved how you thought about this. I just, thank you for the great work you're doing." And that's working for me. Honestly, what I wish though, I wish I got more of it for my team. So I'd say if there's someone on here that's like, "Hey, I'm worried about I'm not getting the FaceTime with my CEO. I recognize it's maybe not the same, but if I got a video every couple of weeks from one of my employees that said, 'Hey, Davis, just want to let you know, I'm thinking about this, or this time I'm thinking about that,' dude, I would watch it and I'd eat it up and I'd love it. And you know what? That employee would be like a new favorite.
That's the thing. And this is what I've said, because I am, same thing. I made our office totally optional. It's more like a WeWork setup where it's more of an amenity opposed to something you have to come into. However, I will say some of even the junior level employees that come in more often, I'm like, you know what? that person's killing it. And like, I know that's silly to think that, but it's like a subconscious thing that you think of when you see somebody working, that person is working hard, whatever. And I know that, again, I know like, even when I feel that, I'm like, that's a silly thing to think of just because you see them. But there's something to that. I think if you got a couple videos from one employee every quarter, I mean, there's a connection there that's built. And then when someone recommends it for promotion, like, oh yeah, she's great, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And maybe it's not totally fair, right?
Right.
But I think it goes to show the importance of communication.
Yes.
I think, again, this goes back to your question, which is like, what is missing about what we had before? Well, this is it. So if you can figure out a way to do it through technology, it's like you're one, and you're probably ahead of the curve if you're figuring this out. And so it's going to serve you well.
Yeah, this is I really want to, make sure this lands for everybody listening. Like, that's any leader that's listening to this podcast right now, to record a quick video, to say a quick thanks. I think that random act of kindness, or I was just thinking about you, even if you had to put it on your calendar once a week and nobody has to know about it, just to remind yourself to do it. Man, I've found as well that just like goes, you can buy 4 months of goodwill from an employee just by taking that 2 minutes,
Yeah. And, sometimes, David, I try to do it every day, but I miss sometimes. Yeah. But I sometimes when I do one, it's like, oh, I'm going to go do like 3 or 4 or 5
now.
Yeah. And it takes, again, a few minutes, but it's, and I actually do have a calendar reminder every day for it.
Yeah. We had someone on our team too, just to kind of like, not to belabor the point, but she actually had her cat passed away. So, as a company, we sent her like white flowers and like a card, and she brings that up like every month, and she's been here almost 2 years now. Like, I just can't believe, like, no company I've ever worked with in the past would have ever done anything like that. And we didn't do that for that type of response. Sure. It was genuine in nature, but it's amazing what those little things. I mean, that's the story that person shares at the family reunion, at the friend birthday, more so than I got a raise or my 401k got 3% addition.
Yeah.
So totally, I love that. What was I have a question for you. When did you realize, when you're working at Cotopaxi, or maybe it happened earlier, but when people started looking at you different, whether they were scared of you as a CEO or they just started looking at your every move? Because I have a story, but I would love to hear. Was there a moment in time where you're like, oh shit, like I'm not just one of the guys or gals anymore?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like one specific moment, but I know what you're talking about. And honestly, it's like, it makes me sad. Like I miss those early days where it's just like, I was just one of the crew, and like in a small office, like on like the crappiest tables and chairs, like that we got off the classifieds, and like nothing matched. And, but we all were just elbow to elbow and worked together. And, yeah, I definitely, you can see it in people's faces and the way they react to you. And I wish people didn't feel that nervousness. That said, I know what it feels like. Like my first job out of college, my boss's boss was the CFO, and once a week I had to go into the CFO's office to go present this report. Your
stomach turns. Yeah, it's tough.
I would like sweat before. I'd be sick all day long knowing I had to go do this thing. And it's like, why did I feel that way? I didn't need to feel that way, but I did. And so I understand why people might have that feeling. I do. One of the things that I think triggered early, where I started to recognize it was different, was I had one of my direct reports, an executive leader that came to me and said, hey, just an FYI, like, I know you were up talking to product last week and just kind of talking with everyone, and you like mentioned some idea you had, which I always have ideas. You're like, I'm always coming with stuff. And she's like, just so you know, like they're wanting to know, like, is that something they have to go run with? Like, they're taking it very, very seriously. And I was like, no, like they shouldn't take that seriously.
I was brainstorming.
I was just, shooting the breeze, I was just like, and so she's like, okay, I'll let them know. And I just kind of realized, oh, wow, like my words really have force now. And like, I have to be more careful and guarded in how I'm saying things, especially to people that are several layers below me that maybe don't interact with me all the time. And, they feel like, oh my gosh, is he asking me to do that? Like, do I need to go, so yeah, those are sad moments. Honestly, I hate that. I wish that didn't exist.
I'm a nice guy. I promise. I'm not the stereotypical movie CEO that fires everybody or what have you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to get into, I think one thing that everybody can relate to as well is, man, I mean, as leaders, we've had so many moments, unfortunate moments the last couple of years, obviously COVID, but then Black Lives Matter, anti-Asian hate, capital insurrection, obviously the war in Ukraine right now. How do you choose? I'm just wondering, how do you choose to address that internally with your team? And then from a brand perspective, how do you make the call whether it makes sense for your brand to speak on those moments?
Oh man, this one's a hard one that I think we're all trying to figure out. And I tend to lean towards internally being very communicative, and I'd rather over communicate and address something that maybe didn't even need to get addressed. Publicly, it's maybe a harder decision. I think where we've kind of landed publicly is like, we're going to address things that are aligned with our deeply held values. And so for us, it's around people and fighting poverty and making sure we live in a more just world. And so if it's tied to those things, it's something that we don't just speak up about, but we actually try to take action with. Yeah. So, Ukraine being the most recent example, it's like, we're not just going to like change our logo to like blue and yellow. It's like, well, what are we going to do? And so, we did a fundraiser where we're matching donations on our website, and, we're putting our money where our mouth is. And we have a long history of working with refugees since the beginning of our business. We've employed hundreds and hundreds of refugees over the years, and donated, I think, well over $1 million to refugee causes. So it's something that I think we have some authenticity behind. But I think where you have risk is where you try to jump onto something where you have no authenticity and you're just using your voice, but you're not really taking action. And that's where I think there's real risk. And frankly, I don't think that really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, because you guys are so mission driven and that's the core of what you do, how do brands or corporations maybe look inward and use their position to better the world and change how, corporations operate, just in terms of like, whether that's that give back or mission? Do you feel like every company should be doing that? Is it just certain companies? Like, how do you if you put your consultant hat on for me, what would you recommend?
I mean, my thoughts on this have changed. Yeah. I'm of the feeling now that I think every business has an ethical responsibility to look beyond profits and to look at how they can impact our planet and people. I just don't think there's any excuse for not doing that at this point. We need business leaders and businesses to step up. Mm-hmm. We have such large megaphones and voices, and we have resources that can affect change. We have people resources and financial resources. So let's use them. Let's use them to go make the world better. And if you do it right, it's going to be good for your business too. Like, that's not why you do it, but I can just tell you from experience, when you do it, you're going to be able to attract and retain talent in a way that you've never experienced before. You're going to have customers that are loyal to who, because they share values with you. And so that's the way that we need to move. We need to change capitalism. Capitalism cannot exist the way it has. We're destroying the planet. Yeah. We are leaving people behind. Let's all pitch in to make this world a little bit better. And I'm so optimistic about this because young people, they're passionate about this.
It's a deal breaker for them.
Oh yeah. I mean, no young person wants to go work for a company anymore that doesn't have a deeply rooted mission. And, I love speaking at universities. I started 2 of my businesses while I was a student, one during undergrad, one during grad school. Like, nice. I learned so much from other entrepreneurs coming and speak. And so I really enjoy that. This young generation, they understand this and they care about it more than when I was in school. No one even talked about it. Even when I was in grad school, at the Wharton School 10 years ago, rarely did someone mention the word social entrepreneur or social impact. It just wasn't really a thing. It is now. Like, that's all people want to talk about now. Yeah. So that gives me a lot of hope. And the reality is that any business can do it, David, as well. Like, and some people say, well, Cotopaxi, you started with that, so it makes it a lot easier. It's like, we had no money. Like, we were giving away more money than we made. Like, it was crazy and super stressful and scary.
Any investor would have looked at you like, what are you guys doing here? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I have some stories I could even dive into there, but, and then I have a really unique story in that the first business I started out of undergrad was a very random business called pooltables.com.
Okay.
And I don't even play pool. Long story of like how I even got there, but started this little business. It did $1 million in sales its first year.
Wow.
And then continued to grow. I owned it for about 6.5 years with my cousin.
Was it, were you selling actual pool tables, or was it a digital game? Or okay.
No, we sold pool tables. We manufactured our own brand.
Wow.
And we sold direct to consumer. So it was one of the earliest digitally native brands, in 2004. Yeah. And we ended up selling the business. And a decade later, more than a decade later, last year, I bought the business back.
Nice.
It's about twice the size that it was when we sold it. So it hadn't really grown a lot, but it was bigger. I paid a lot more for it than I sold it for. But I bought it and I converted it to a benefit corporation.
Wow.
And I hired a great.
Telling you have an amazing pool table at home, though, right?
I do. Of course I do. Yeah. I don't play very well, but I have one. But the point being that we were using this business to go do good, and we're going to use it to go fight poverty. And in some ways, it is a lot easier to do with a business that's established, because this business has been profitable for 18 straight years. I can go use that profit to go do good. There's not the stress that I had with Cotopaxi, but there are some unique challenges. We have to go recreate the business in some ways, and the culture and the brand and everything to go do good. But the point is that you can do it. If I can do it with pool tables, you can do it with whatever business you're in. It's possible to do with any business, no matter how old or how young it is, what industry it's in. We can do good.
What was the single biggest moment you can identify that really changed Cotopaxi to an idea and something that you really think could go somewhere to wow, we have something here? Was there a campaign, a moment?
There was a moment. Okay. Yeah, there was a moment. And it was, I had the idea for Cotopaxi. I was living in Brazil where I had built my last business. And I moved to the US to build the brand. I chose to live in Salt Lake City. Great access to the outdoors. I know you're a skier or snowboarder. Yeah. What are you a skier?
Snowboarder. I'm a snowboarder. I should have started as a skier though.
There we go. Okay. So, love the outdoors, and Utah is the most generous state in the country in terms of time and money donated. And so I felt like this would be a great community to go build this brand in. And, I'm just, so I had the idea, started building a team. We got some investors to back us, and we went and launched the business. The day that we turned on our website, we also held an event called the Questival, this 24-hour adventure race. Yeah. And the way we got people to know about it was we bought 2 llamas on the online classifieds, and we took these llamas around college campuses in Utah, and thousands of people started they'd come up to take selfies with the llamas.
Did you just say there's 30,000 UGC posts about what?
Yes, we had 30,000 social media posts of people, and everyone that did the race got one of our backpacks.
Wow.
And so we had 30,000 social media posts of people wearing our bags, doing good in service in the community, adventuring in the outdoors. We gave hundreds of challenges. They could go create their own adventure with their team to go get points, and the winning teams got trips and gear. And so I remember the moment for me where it went from my idea to this is something that's going to work was the check-in point for the Questival. I saw there was this line that stretched a block and a half or 2 blocks long. And in the line, I saw several teams wearing Cotopaxi shirts and hats.
Wow.
But we didn't make shirts or hats. We launched with 5 backpacks.
So they made them themselves online.
They made their own homemade. Yes, wow. They made their own homemade llama Cotopaxi shirts and hats. And that's when I realized this brand is resonating with young people. They care about what we stand for.
How do you look at social media with your brand? I know it's extremely important. I mean, obviously a moment like that in the very beginning, you understood the immense value of social and digital and the ability to make something run like that. But in your day-to-day, how do you if you can sum it up for me, how you approach it as a CEO with your company?
Yeah. So maybe 2 different things. Number one, how do I think about social media myself as a leader, as a CEO? And then maybe, as a brand, how do we think about social media? So as a brand, for us, immediately from the beginning, we knew how important social media was going to be in connecting with consumers. And we had a lot of very passionate brand loyalists that
build that community right early on.
Yeah. So we wanted to reinforce that. We wanted to feel they connected with us, and so that was a big part of it. I think we've had success there. On a personal side, I don't know. There's one medium that you have to use as a CEO or as a leader. You can find one that works for you. The one that I tend to gravitate towards is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I post on there probably once a week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes I skip a week. But
I think it's such an undervalued tool as well that not only leaders don't take advantage, but like every professional needs to take advantage of this tool. Like it makes so much sense.
It does. And I love sharing. I'd say most of my posts end up with like about 100,000 views. And what's unique is that like these, it's very different from like Instagram or especially Facebook, where you're really kind of only connected to the people that you really know. Twitter and LinkedIn, you're connected to people that you've never met before, but that you're interested in learning from and following, connecting to. And, the downside of Twitter is that it's the most toxic channel on the, medium on the planet. Like I can't go on Twitter without like feeling like anxiety.
They call it doom scrolling, over there.
Yeah. Yeah, just like people tearing each other down, ripping on each other. It's just like I find it hard as someone that's like more sensitive to those kind of things. Like I don't like the way I feel when I'm on Twitter, but I love LinkedIn because it's like it's a positive community. It's like people supporting each other, celebrating each other's wins,
sharing tips.
Sharing tips. I love sharing like lessons that I've learned as a leader, lessons that I've learned as an entrepreneur, mistakes I've made. Like these, you can be vulnerable, and like I love the community there, and so that's where I think I've found a voice, and I love sharing on there.
I want to go back to people for a sec because I know you just much like me. I think we both really are fascinated by it, but also kind of geek out over how you can be the best leader possible. What's the biggest thing you've learned about leadership and leading humans in your position?
I'd say the thing that I've learned, and this is something I think I've learned over the last 7 or 8 years building Cotopaxi, is that one of the most underutilized tools of leadership is love. And you don't hear the word love very often, and certainly not often enough in the business world. And I think that should change. I tell in our all hands meeting, at the end of every all hands meeting, I tell my team, I love you and I care about you. And I'm your biggest supporter. If there's anything I can ever do, reach out to me. I work for you, not the other way around. And, when I'm with my executive team, I tell them, I love you. I care for you. And, there's a deep connection that we have, and there's a lot of trust. And I know they would run through a wall for this brand and for me, and I do the same for them. And, when it comes time to share feedback, which we have a culture that really loves sharing feedback, and we think it's very important. It's not as painful. When someone tells you, when you ask, and, every one-on-one, I ask my direct reports, what can I do better as a CEO?
Yeah.
How can I improve? How can I better serve you? When they give me that feedback, it's like, I know where it comes from. It comes from a place of love. They want me to succeed. They want me to be the best CEO. And same goes for them. They know I'm only giving feedback because I want them to win. And so I think then that only works if you have love. And so yeah, that'd be my answer.
How many employees are you at now, David?
We're at maybe 220.
Okay. So I've often heard too, I think it's so true, people don't quit companies, they quit managers. How do you ensure, like, you had a mission, you had a culture, you had core values that you wanted to instill, you started growing, you have to start expanding. How do you, I guess, make sure that your people leaders below you, right, are also being a beacon for that mission, for that core values? Is it checks and balances? Is it ways that you can just ensure that's happening?
Yeah. Really great question. We are at the point, I'd say when we got to 100, that's where I felt like I'd lost control of the ability for me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And we'll have 300 employees by the end of this year. So it's like, It's feeling like this has to be something we figure out. One thing I talk a lot about in our team is that everyone needs to be a keeper of the flame.
Yeah.
And I can't be the only keeper of the flame. And so, we have, and I think this comes down to, they need to hear about our purpose and mission constantly. Every time I talk to my team, they know why we exist.
Yeah.
We don't exist to sell backpacks or to sell jackets or to sell a tent or a sleeping bag. We exist to lead this movement of changing capitalism, of fighting and eradicating poverty.
And they know if they work on that campaign to sell the backpack, that will ladder up to the North Star to do so. So it all makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we share that. Like, if in every retail store that we have, we'll share every month, they get a report that says your store this month helped educate 15 girls.
That's awesome.
India.
Good for you.
We provided X number of vaccines. So like, I think it's a lot about, really it's about communication. If you're doing a great job communicating, I think you're going to be able to transcend those layers with your culture and mission.
Yeah, since I love the fact that you are obviously a founder and CEO, because I think it provides so much value. What is a story of an employee, or I'm sorry, a candidate that did such a good job in terms of the interview process, or how they broke through the mold or went above and beyond, that you would like to share, that if somebody else replicated, they probably put themselves in a pretty good position to make it happen?
Oh gosh, I have a few funny ones. Yeah. Actually, one guy that we actually didn't end up hiring, but I really love this. Like, he actually bought ads and started serving these ads to anyone that worked at Cotopaxi.
That's
so our
great.
whole company was getting served these ads with him, like basically saying he wanted this job.
That's so funny.
But one that just happened last week, I interview anyone that before they join the team, I do the final interview.
Oh, wow.
And it takes a lot of my time, but I believe it matters because number one, I am, I guess, one final vetting checkpoint. But it's pretty rare that I nick somebody. It does happen, but for the most part, for me, it's about selling them on why we exist, on making sure they know who I am and that I know who they are and that I care about them and that I'm rooting for the success as they join our team. And, I was doing this final interview with a candidate last week, and a junior, almost entry-level kind of role. And as I was in the interview, she said, "I don't know if you recognize my name." And I was like, "Oh, I don't think I do." And she's like, "Well, like 2 years ago, I sent you a message on LinkedIn, multiple messages." And I was just like, I'm obsessed with your brand. And she pulls out all these things. Like, she's done a bunch of our festivals. She'd read all these articles. She for like years, she had obsessed over the business. She's like, "I didn't get a job right out of school, but I went and worked somewhere else for 2 years and I got the experience I needed to go get this job." So cool. And so it was like, for me, it was like, are you kidding me? This person's been fighting for 2 years to get work for us and has built experience and has like never let go of this dream to work for us. Like, it's like, how can you say no to that?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. All right, a couple of rapid fire questions. I know we're almost at the end of time here. What are some other brands out there outside of maybe a Patagonia that either inspire you or are doing a really good job? Because I know you're constantly out there looking for mission-driven brands and people that are doing some great work.
Yeah, I think some of my favorite brands are, I love Rhone. I know you
Nate.
Decades, love Rhone. They do such a great job with their business and brand. Allbirds, Joey, their CEO, was a classmate of mine at Wharton, awesome. And just has been so true to their mission of protecting the environment and thinking differently about how to make great product in a sustainable way. Yeah. I think of one of my earliest inspirations of building purpose into a business was the Warby Parker brand. They were the four founders were classmates of mine in business school as well. And
wow, this business school is just cranking out some mission-driven.
I know. The Harry's founders they were classmates. So like I've loved seeing these founders that build great purpose and mission. Bombas is another. The sock company, Dave Heath, their CEO, is just fantastic, and he's done a great job building purpose and mission into that brand. Yeah. So yeah, those are the brands that awesome. Inspire me.
What was a book that you gift the most often, or maybe changed your life in a big way?
Oh man, I love reading, and
I can tell you got a nice little bookshelf back there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually did a LinkedIn post a few weeks back, and I shared my books that I read last year, and I think there were like 40 something books. And there's all sorts of genres too. Like there's not one, but I think some of my favorites are around adventure and leadership. And so a few favorites that I've read recently: Island of the Lost. Okay. A crazy story of survival in a sub-Antarctic island where there was a shipwreck, and I'm not going to ruin the story, so I don't want to tell you too much other than
spoiler alert.
It is one of the most beautiful, and I didn't spoil anything yet. So but there's some things that unravel in this book where you're just like mind blown, and the contrast of leadership and watching how one leader leads versus another, it changes the way you think about leading.
Interesting.
So I really love that book. There's a number of other great books in that same vein, like Endeavor, of course, is a great one. Yeah. or endurance. There's also Island of Last Place on Earth, which is a race to the South Pole. And then there's one I read recently called Skeletons on the Sahara. Kind of a shipwrecked, survived, like crazy story. So I love kind of that vein of books.
That's awesome. As a CEO, how do you, and this is another, like, I guess, tip for the managers, directors out there. How do you like to receive information? Is it a clean email? Is it a slide deck? Is it just, do you always tie it back to data? Like, I guess, I know everybody's kind of subjective or objective on how they want to do that, but how do you think the best way is to approach a CEO with information?
I think the faster you can communicate the message, the better.
Yeah.
So it's over. Like if you get a deck, it's like in some ways that's great, but it's like if it's going to take an extra step for me to open something and try to interpret over slide after slide after slide, it's like, man, just tell me like what I need to know.
I just love the bullet points in the body of the email, let's roll.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Slack message with bullets or an email with bullets like that. That's great. And then if I need to dive deeper, we can jump on a call and talk through it.
Yeah. And I think that's a common theme because, CEOs, you have so much you're overseeing. There's so much going on. The faster you get the information, the more that's appreciated. Absolutely. I'll kind of leave it with this. What would you recommend folks whether it's in your industry, any industry, as they're coming up in their careers and after seeing your success as well? What's the one takeaway you would want them to take away from all this?
Sorry, David. Ask the question again.
I'll say it a different way. So just like advice for people coming up in the industry, they obviously want to be in the C-suite one day. They want to increase their career and continue to step up that ladder. Being someone that makes those decisions, what's the number one piece of advice you give those folks?
Okay, great. I would say just be yourself. You're going to see other great leaders and you're going to think, oh my gosh, I need to emulate. I need to be like that person. You can learn great things from them. But where I find people really excel is when they identify what they're really, truly great at. And you probably have something that no one else has. So really double down on that. And that if you can figure that out, that's when you're going to really excel in your career. And people are going to notice how passionate you are about this one thing. And so figure out who you are and go just double down on those things you're really.
Double down on your innate strengths instead of trying to make your weaknesses your strengths. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Davis, like I said, I'm going to steal some of these things. I hope you don't get mad at me. No cease and desist or anything. Some of the knowledge you dropped is great. And I think all of us leaders are trying to kind of still figure out what the best combination of stuff is. But amazing story. Congratulations on all the success and all the great work you're doing, man.
Thanks, David. Really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. All right.
Yeah.
There we have it, Davis Smith. I gotta tell you, Will, probably one of my most favorite conversations on the pod. I know you were listening from afar there, and
he was great
in your booth. But I wanted to take it a different direction because we go super deep into marketing and the nuances of social. And I really wanted to pick his brain as a CEO. And I gotta tell you, I threw some selfish questions in there. Maybe I want to know some answers from a fellow CEO of, what he recommends, what he's found. And I think already some brilliant ideas when he talks about his summer camps with his team, recording videos and a one-off, for multiple people and his teammates. He interviews all 250 people that have gone through his building. He's the last line of defense, the last interview to make sure that they understand the mission. Just some amazing stuff.
Imagine that as a candidate, though. Like, you think you have the job, you've been through like 4 rounds of interviews, and it's like, talk to our CEO and he'll make the final decision.
And I just relate to so much of what he's saying, and just a wealth of knowledge. My goal was to read 24 books in a year. I failed at that goal. The dude, drops 40, a 40 burger on me, makes me feel even more insecure with my book reading, and I need to do more of that. But no, man.
My goal is 20 as well, but I think it depends on the size of the book, right? Like, what if you read one 700-page book?
See, now you're getting into the minutia because you're just not hitting their goal.
I think you have to
one more piece. Will, is one book. It's not 7 books.
No excuses if you choose to read one piece. That's all.
You make a goal, you got to make it happen. No, but man, wealth of knowledge. I know I learned a ton, and I think what I try to do there is. Any leader, right? You manage one person, 3 people, 5 people. I know so many of you that give me feedback and positive vibes from listening to this show. I just think there's so much stuff there that you can learn from it and gain some knowledge on. So I'm excited to speak to Davis more and build a relationship with him because he is a very smart dude doing amazing things. And I think any business out there too that's looking to increase their do good, man. It's just like great stuff from him. So good.
That's
good
like
get,
the
Will.
rare too, where it applies to literally anyone at every position, like from the CEO down to an intern, where it's like, here's how you stand out. If you're this person, here's how you notice these people that you maybe don't have time for anymore as a leader. I think he just did a really good job of breaking that down.
I agree. So thank you again, Will Kelly, producer Will, for getting Davis on the program. We always thank David Ferker for all his help. We're going to jump into the studio here right after this, Will, and maybe hang some canvas, some sheetrock. So looking forward to it. Episode number 83. This has been yet another edition of the Business Social Podcast. My name is David Brickley, the host, and it's all been powered by STN Digital.